Hello again. We've been together now for a whole week. I think that what you're aware of, what I've seen, we have a very diverse group. Uh, I got the impression, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the impression that most of you have worked together before. And that's important. One of the things that I learned quite by accident when I was doing what you're doing, we were doing cohort work as well. We followed through pretty much. Yours is not as formal a cohort as the one we have in the EDD program. But that's not relevant to anything. The fact you know your colleagues, and there's an old, and you vaguely remember the Beatles, but you may not remember the song. One of their favorite songs was Getting By with a Little Help from Your Friends. And so I would suggest that you always, wherever possible, use your colleagues. If there are things you have questions about, if you have insights, I'm certainly available as well on, as I told you in the first tape, on anything you want me to go over with you, I will. And when things get into the heart of the course, we're almost there. When you're doing a 5-week course, it's there before you know it. But anyway, let me move into one of the requirements, and I can talk a little bit more about it. And then you can determine whether you have some good access or whether you have a friend that has some good access or I have access. That basically is one of the other major assignments in the course, along with the short papers, and then the only other paper of any length is the one where you interview someone who has a budget and or finance responsibility higher than yours. You may have a piece of one. Yeah, I've had students in here that were vice presidents. And one of the vice presidents, I had interviewed the president of the college. Another one who was in a resource development job at a college, she chose to interview the chairperson of the board of governors of the college. So there are lots of exciting things you can do, but time will be gone before you know it. Therefore, what I need for you to do is to, by now, you should be thinking about who you're going to interview. We get a little closer to this particular time. I'm going to send you a form. You may not need it, but it's something that I got in trouble once for not doing. Specifically, that was giving you a form. If your person tells you that the interview does not have to, that they're not worrying about signing off on giving the interview, just go ahead and give the interview, fine. It does not have to be face-to-face. Obviously, we can do that with Zoom if you use Zoom, Google Hangout if you use Google Hangout, even the telephone. Telephone is very good. But you can use the telephone, just make sure you have a list of your questions. Well, I use that for all of them. So anyway, that's the first thing I think is important. This next one that I'm very interested in you being comfortable with, and you might want to include something about this in your interview, and that is one of the bane of every one of our existences. If we have any remote involvement or reasonably coherent involvement with finance at an institution, because we are creatures of several other entities. State universities, which most of you probably are part of, you deal with a board. You deal with a board of, for want of a better term, I'll say board of governors. They can be called other things, but beyond the board of governors, you also deal with the state of Maryland, unless you happen to be working with someone. We're very close. We have some students here from Virginia. We have a few students here from Pennsylvania. Then it would be from those states. And you also, for good or ill, and it's getting to be more every day, it seems like, you have to deal with the federal government. And what I'm specifically referring to is the issue of unfunded mandates. The state says, you will do this. Or the governors say, you will do this, Board of Governors. Now, they're the easiest ones because they have some control over your budget. And you, collaborating with whoever's above you, can go to them and say, well, you approve the initial budget. You want us to do this. Here is our proposal for how we will reallocate funds within the budget. And sometimes, depending upon the nature and amount, you have to have governing board authorization to do that. So keep that thought in mind. I want you to, pardon me, I want you to share some of that with me, because one of the questions I used to ask my undergraduates all the time was, who is going to learn the most in this course? And they look at me funny and say, what are you talking about, learn the most? We're students. And then I try to remind them that we're all lifelong learners. We are all students for all of our life. And having the brilliant minds that I have before me, or as it were on a video screen, you will introduce me to things that I'm not aware of. And that's great, because the next time I teach the course, people coming after you will benefit from your research, your work, what have you. So I want you to let me know how that's dealt with wherever you currently are. You also can deal with that as a part of your interview. I may be reiterative here for a minute, but you talk about that whole unfunded mandate. Right now, I would guess that that is the number one continuing problem. Now, I am an optimist. My glass is proverbially always half full. And I don't believe that this coronavirus thing will be around forever. It's going to be, for the next year to 18 months, it's going to be very, very difficult for all of us, because every single school in the state of Maryland has been, in Pennsylvania and Virginia and even West Virginia, have been told by their governor and their Secretary of Education, whatever they may be called, here in Maryland is a Secretary of Education, that you must give back money. For Morgan, it's 20%. And that is pretty difficult, because as you by now should have read, 80% of the money involved with a school of education, with an educational institution, goes for salaries, fringe benefits. And so that hurts the people who are doing the most important thing being done, that is running the institution. So find out how they deal with these kinds of things, and that's very, very important to all of us. Like I say, the Kona thing is tough. But in the long run, the Fed, the state, will continue to have these unfunded mandates. And the thing we have to understand is how well thought through is the budget of my institution. Or perhaps if you're not at an institution currently, you can talk with a friend who is, and he or she can connect you. How do they have a rainy day fund? Is a common parlance I hear. A rainy day fund in case halfway through a budget year, a unfunded mandate comes through the state or the Fed says you will do this. Okay, enough for that. Also, want to say just a little bit more about the interview. I've heard from several of you. That's fine. I'd like to be hearing from all of you within the next week or so, because as I said, if you don't have a friend at the moment who has someone, I have several people who have been presidents of colleges. Both of them are on staff here at Morgan right now, and they've agreed that if I need to have someone do an interview, they are willing to perform that interview. Just let me know. Right now, I think we're moving well. I have not had anybody tell me that they're faced by external issues that they cannot quite control, so we have to begin to be very creative. So that's good. That's good to know. And we will progress on with the course. And I'm having fun with it, and I hope you are. Thank you.